presentation is supported by our regional water supplier, Tarrant Regional Water District. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean it to meet drinking water standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, and Mansfield, to provide water conservation programs for the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of a growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. This is why TRWD supports many programs that help save water through outdoor watering and gardening education. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you are a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler system checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home and provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There is also an event calendar where you can find important information about future classes and workshops. TRWD also partners with organizations like Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Tarrant County Master Gardeners to provide educational programs just like this one. Be sure to check out SaveTarrantWater.com and sign up for their free services.
Well, here is the greenhouse, and here's the other part. This is the other side from my greenhouse. You see the raised beds, and I have some cleanup I need to do. And the fence is here because we have a 14-month-old puppy called a Catahoula who likes to come in and visit and go shopping for food. So hence the fence here. So we're working on it. Okay. At the beginning here, let's do a disclaimer. The information provided in our workshop here is for educational purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. We're always asking everybody to seek advice from your qualified healthcare provider before beginning any herbal regimen, especially if you're pregnant, nursing, taking any medications, or have a medical condition. The content here is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. So the presenter disclaims any liability for adverse effects resulting from your use or application of the information herein. Use herbs responsibly and with informed consent. And just as an FYI, I have an agreement with my primary care and my cardiologist that I always research my herbs because I'm a retired advanced practice nurse who used to work with open heart patients and all kinds of other good things. So I know when I drink such and such green tea that my heart rate may go up, things like that. Today we're going to talk about native. What's the difference between a native and adaptive herb? And why is growing herbs so important today? Why all of a sudden is it such a national, popular thing to do today? And let's talk about herbs versus spices. And then I'll go into Texas herbs and give you a list of resources and how to contact our help desk for questions if you like. Today I was listening to our international meeting of the Master Gardeners, and one of the presenters had listed on his inventory of books, one called The Organic Medicinal Herb Farmer. And this is by Jeff Carpenter. And I opened up on Amazon the little quote. They have several pages of his new book here that was written in 2023. And a phrase just struck out at me and caught my attention. So I'm going to read it to you guys. And it's on his page 1 in his new book. It says, "The heart of herbalism is a philosophy of enhancing and supporting the body's innate function and capacity for wellness and healing." That sounds exactly why I take an herbal tea at nighttime to kind of help slow my brain down so I can relax and go to sleep. Those kinds of things. As we take different herbs, think to yourself, why do you take them? And a lot of times it may be elderberry to kind of help your immune system. There's all kinds of reasons why we take different herbs. Maybe because you like something to taste better when you cook it. There's all kinds of reasons out there. But in 2020, the research showed that Americans consumed, not necessarily grew, but they consumed over $11.2 billion worth of herbal supplements. Those could be pills, capsules, tea blends, plants, anything at all, but we consumed over $11 billion worth of products and herbs. Okay. Native plant, what does that mean? The picture on your left is from our Pioneer Herb Garden at the Fort Worth Log Cabin Village. And I grant it's a little hard to see the little Turk's cap. Nonetheless, a little fruit on here. But how many of you knew that the fruit of a Turk's cap actually tastes like an apple? And that it contains a lot of the seeds. If you wanted to grow Turk's cap in the future from seeds, you would be harvesting these little fruits and growing them. It actually tasted pretty good when I tried it the other day. But a native plant for us here in Tarrant County, it exists naturally without a human bringing it here. It's very water wise, it's drought tolerant, needs less maintenance, and very often doesn't need any fertilizing at all to grow well. It's adapted to our environment naturally. Okay? And adapted may be a plant or a shrub or a tree that's brought in from other parts of Texas, the United States, or anywhere from around the world that has adapted and actually thrives in our local climate and our different soil types, because heaven knows we have a lot of soil types in Tarrant County. Okay. The plant on your right, and this is the reason why I always take pictures of things, because my memory's a little old. This is something called, it's a coreopsis, but it's a new one, and it's called a spicy sizzle and spice, kind of a crazy coreopsis. It's from the plains group there, and it's native in other parts of Texas, and it's come here and it's doing really well. So it's different ones, like landsleaf is the one that's native to our area, but this is not one of those. And it definitely fits in my new garden. I put it in a nice little raised bed, and it's growing beautifully over there as a perfect touch of color to the area. Okay. So why do we need to grow herbs? First of all, it's the cost. If you've ever gone to the store and you've bought any kind of culinary herbs, they can get rather expensive at different times of the year. You know, medicinal uses, and again with approval. Elderberry is very good, like I mentioned, with immune systems. You know, valerian or chamomile or lavender. Even in my nightly blend of tea here that I take to kind of help relax, lemon balm, valerian, peppermint for a little bit of toning down the bitter taste there, and caraway, and then a little licorice root to add a little sweetness to it there. Okay. Ornamental uses, we use all kinds of things. If you've never seen a mullein plant, the tall, sometimes as tall as 8-foot tall stalk that they have, has been used in the past and currently still is as a torch at times. So you have Christmas decorations out of herbs and flowers and things like that. Some of the other uses for herbs are pollinators. They do attract a large amount of butterflies, bees, all kinds of pollinators. In fact, there's a lot of them that are actually, they attract or beneficial pollinators. They kind of get rid of the other ones, incendiaries, and I'll talk about those a little bit later also. But your herbs can come in a wide range of choices as we convert them over. They can be teas, infusions, they can be tinctures or salves, all kinds of things. In fact, if you've ever had a bleed on your wrist, you can slap a lamb's ear or a number of other herbs on top of it and they stop the bleeding. If I've got a sunburn, I take a piece of aloe. I love it when you take the gel and you put in a little baggie and put it in the refrigerator so that you have cool gel to put on top of a sunburn. And a lot of my grandkids and even my kids have had that benefit before. So there's a number of ways that we can use it. Use different ones. Herbs, and one of the many definitions, any plant with leaves, seeds, or flowers used for flavoring food, medicine, perfume, or other form used by humans. Any seed-bearing plant that doesn't have a woody stem and dies down at the end of the growing season. A lot of herbalists, like I said, include plants and shrubs and vines and trees and cacti and succulents. They include the whole realm when they're talking about herbs. And we'll talk a little bit about different ones that are annuals and biannuals and even perennials, especially tender perennials. The ones that don't do too well in the wintertime. Spices we use for cooking, pretty much. And they're from the root, the stem, the bulb, bark, plants of a plant, most often dried. Today I was making a rice dish for my husband before I came on. So I had all kinds of veggies in it. I had a little marinara sauce, and I had a little leftover spam I cut up. So out of those ingredients I used today, you have onions, you have peppers, you had parsley, you had, oregano with the Italian spices. You had a number of herbs in different formats in there that I was using just to cook dinner with. Okay. The reason why I'm highlighting a few different books on here, Howard Garrett is well known for his book, Herbs for Texas, and he talks about 148 different herbs, plants, trees, vines, shrubs, etc. And it's okay, I'm not going to go over 148, but that's a great reference for you to, if you're a beginner, to start out with. And he goes over how to plant them, how tall they're going to get, a large number of qualities you would like to know or need to know when you start out growing your different herbs. When I first started growing herbs a few years ago, I've been busy being a nurse for, 40 to 60 hours a week as an advanced practice one. So I went to the store and I picked up a packet that said culinary herbs on it. You've probably seen them at your local box stores. And inside of this packet, it had cilantro and basil and parsley and oregano. A good 4-pack, to get you started. And then when those were going well, the next year I tried herbal teas because I thought, I like to drink green tea. Let me try some new ones. And then this packet from the same company had German chamomile. We find that in a lot of our herbal tea blends. Peppermint is even better than the mint belly some days. Lemon balm adds that nice little gentle lemon flavor to it. And then rosemary is very fragrant, but is actually very good. It belongs in the mint family with us. So a good wide variety there to get started. Another one that's more recent, a good textbook for you if you're interested, is one by Bevan Cohen. And his just came out earlier this year. And he's up in the north part, but he talks about different types of herbs that he grows year round on his farm, whether it be spring, summer, autumn, or winter. And I caution you, when you're using herbs from authors who are in different parts of the U.S., does their category of how they work with herbs, does it work here in our part in Tarrant County? So take that to mind when you're dealing with it. Anywhere in North Texas, we probably have a lot more summer than they do up north where Mr. Cohen is from. But the Healing Garden is one I picked up earlier this year. And Juliet Blakespore, if I said her last name right, goes over a lot about growing herbs, how to cultivate them, the hints and tips and tricks there. She also talks about how to use herbs, not only in culinary, but in teas and all kinds of different methods. So if you want to know a little bit more about how to use them, she goes over that. And what I like about Juliet's book is she talks about how to best germinate a lot of our herb seeds, because we may have to cold stratify them or scarify them, even cold moist stratification on some of them. And again, those are the kinds of things that she's mentioning. This one I picked up when I was doing a talk on container gardening, Pam Farley. And what I liked, what that was interesting in hers is if you're interested in just small spaces where you're very concerned about the lack of sun or the abundance of shade or what size container, or how can you work them, and what's the difference between this container and that container, those kind of things. She goes over a lot of that with you in regards to herbs, and everybody can imagine why you wouldn't put a tomato plant in a container that's less than 12 inches deep, because your roots are going to run out of room there. And mint may be another one that needs a little bit larger there. But she gives examples. Basil is one of those too that needs a couple of gallons on a container to grow very healthily. Okay. And there's a number of other brochures that are worth mentioning that I have my resources. Like there's Growing Herbs in Texas. That's part of the Texas A&M brochures. There's one called Edible Landscaping brochure that's very good. Even Collin County puts out a graph on herbs recommended for Collin County because of that zone and the soil that's up there. And the author of that one is Sarah Dodd, and she does an excellent job on it too. Okay. So now for the good stuff. Let's go on to Texas herbs. Okay. I started out with aloe. because this has been my best friend for probably the longest of all the plants that I have. And aloe vera, there's over 600 species of aloe all over the world, and there's several hundred here in the North America part. But, it's a tender perennial. It would not survive our winter time for the most part. I pretty much keep it in the greenhouse nowadays. When I had it in my house for 7 years, it had a particular window that it liked. It didn't like the windows in the kitchen. It liked the window over here. I got the morning sun. I got the afternoon shade. It wasn't too cold, too hot. It wasn't in the air conditioner vent, and it loved where it grew. Okay. It's getting used to the greenhouse. In fact, it had a brand new pup this year. Okay? It can get quite big and it can overflow your pot. And every few years, you need to change out the pot for it to grow healthily. But the gel is what's most interesting there. I had a new family move in next door, and one of the first things one of the younger girls did was went and walked right through barefoot an anthill. So as mom was trying to find some Benadryl or some Caladryl, I went and grabbed one of my cooler bags of aloe vera gel, and as she was wiping off everything, they kind of watered her down and they put some of that on her, and she quit crying. So success. And it works really well that way. Okay. Be careful when you're cutting off the leaves because it has kind of a juice to it. That's kind of a yellow. That's not what you should be eating or anything like that. So put it upside down and let it drain real well. And then you can cut it open and get the gel and things out of that for you. In fact, aloe is one of the herbs that's mentioned in the Bible in John. Back there in the herbal references, it was used for burns, constipation, cancer, skin irritation, all kinds of good things back there. So, in some areas, actually put it in a aloe juice, but get that professionally bagged, okay, and make sure that they know how to work with it. Okay. Basil, I think everybody in the world has grown that before, right? And there are so many varieties of basil nowadays. You have Thai basil with a pretty purple color. You have all kinds of opportunities there, but for the most part, it's annual in our part of the world. Full sun, afternoon shade. Mine does better in the shade of the greenhouse in the afternoon, and it does great out there. Seed or transplant in the spring after the last frost. I start a lot of my seeds. I'm fortunate to have the greenhouse, so I start them in about January, about 6 weeks before last frost date, mid-March, to get them going there. Okay. Be careful about the different varieties in regards to how tall they get, how wide they're going to spread. Do you have room where you're planting them in? Are you going to put them in the ground? You're going to keep them in the container? That's an issue with a lot of them. Okay. And Miss Farley in her container book mentions again that 2-gallon depth on it to make sure you've got enough room for it. Okay. I'm going to caution a lot of people, and again, I don't know the experience of people listening, but make sure you pay attention to the days to germination if you're starting them from seeds. How long do you need to protect that plant in your greenhouse before you put it in the ground in the springtime? If it takes 60 days, you may have to back it up from mid-March to mid-January when you start your seeds. If it's only 30 days, you can start them in middle of February. You know your area of Texas and when's the last frost date on there. And then look at days to maturity. A lot of our herbs, we can do 2 or 3 different or plant several different weeks of those guys to keep them coming throughout, the spring into summer into fall. You can look that apart. And again, basil has all kinds of culinary issues, teas, salad, vegetables, vinegars, butters, you name it, and basil's in there. It's been used a lot for stomach ailments and for gas, digestive issues, pretty much. But again, think of something you can't make better with a little bit of basil when you're putting it together. Okay. Butterfly weed, one of my favorite ones to work with. I just went through with the demonstration garden. We did a presentation the other day about the different types of wheat, butterfly, and the milkweeds that we have here that are native or typical to our area. And tuberosa here is one of the ones that they used to call pleurisy roots. And a lot of you guys can probably figure out why, right? Because they used to use it to improve lung conditions historically. Okay. And again, most of the milkweeds don't do well in pots. They need a little bit of open space for them, and one of the unique things is that I was reading a report from Baylor University and Lady Bird Johnson. It's called Identification of Milkweeds in Texas. And one of the items they were mentioning is that most of our milkweeds do much better when you cold, moist stratify them versus just cold stratify. And cold stratification is when I put them out in my garden in mid-November, maybe the end of October, depending on how our climate's going, and you let them sit there during the wintertime, and in the springtime, that cold is going to help them germinate better. And this report was telling me that from 10% to 90%, the improvement on germination rates by adding that moistness to it. Okay. So what I have right now is I have a number of seeds that I have in cold, moist stratification in the greenhouse over here to get them ready to plant. And I'll be planting them as seeds in my greenhouse, getting them ready for the springtime, kind of helping them get going. And we're going to see how that does, whether doing them outside with the cold stratification or just doing them in the greenhouse and the refrigerator and the cold, moist stratifying. And we'll see how they go. But again, we mentioned you can harvest the seeds, the flowers, the roots, almost all of it. The fibers, back in World War II, they used millions of pounds of the fibers in there called the floss for insulation and stuffing pillows and even, what do you use when you're tossed overboard? Those floaters, they use those too. Medicinal, again, respiratory issues, digestive, skin conditions, okay? And even certain parts of it could be edible if it's prepared properly. Just be very careful with that. But that's why it's pleurisy root. And they have so many beautiful ones. There's several of them, anywhere from 70 to 100 that are very normal here in North America, and about 36 that are native here in Texas, different varieties through here. And we are fortunate to have multiple ones that grow real well here in North Central Texas with us. Calendula, this is one of my favorite ones, okay? It's an annual plant, so unfortunately we have to do it quite often. And what I noticed when I was one of the presenters at the International Master Gardeners were talking about the other day, anytime you see an herb name like Calendula officinalis, that means it was originally part of a medicine that they were making, hence the officinalis. And we'll refer to that with several of our herbs as we go through it. But calendula grows really well in the full sun. It likes cool season better. It's also called the pot herb or the pot marigold would be common names. And you'll see it in tea as it calms down an upset stomach. You'll see it in a lot of sleeping medications. You'll see it in tea blends for a sore, scratchy throat. Helps you fight a cold. Those kinds of things. And it grows depending on the top that you're looking for, and you're growing 1 to 2 foot. Okay. Mine's a little bit taller than that right now. It likes what's growing. It's a little bit bushier, but we'll see how it goes the rest of the summertime as the heat kicks in here. But leaves and flowers, and if you're eating it, it has a mild peppery taste. It's very good in salads and fish dishes, as we note here. Okay. Flowers make a yellow dye, which is very common through here. And it's best known, and this is a Mother Earth News article that I was reading, for healing the skin, for irritations, burns, bruises, wounds, okay, those kind of things. And the pioneers used to use it for the petals for flavoring, like in colored broth, in butter, and cheese, those kinds of things they were looking at. So again, you can see where we're going at. Works really well. Coriander, the seeds, cilantro, the plant. It's an annual. Full sun to light shade. It really likes cool weather the best. My pollinators, I think last year, the year before, decided to give me some gifts. They planted 6 of these little plants. They had a poop day underneath my front deck. It's much cooler in there, much more shadier in there. And those plants grew until pretty much, I think, the end of August. So I had a never-ending supply of cilantro. You just had to crawl underneath the front deck a little bit to get to it. They're best if you're going to grow them in pots so you can rescue them when it gets too hot outside. and at least a gallon or so, and make sure it's at least a foot deep to give those roots places to go there. Okay, but 18 to 24 inches tall, that's pretty good. About that wide, but leaves and seed, fresh citrusy, and I misspelled citrusy, I think, taste, and it's very aromatic, like basil. Okay, a lot of people eat the seeds raw. The foliage, a little leaves and things are great in salads and meat and a whole slew of things. I put it in my guacamole, for instance. Okay, and some people use the roots to help flavor curry. But the tea, if you're using coriander in your tea, it helps with gas. And ointment, for instance, helps with your arthritis, and it's very good with your digestion. Okay. You collect the seeds when they turn brown, so be really careful that they're ready to go there. Okay. And the seed is actually the most powerful point of the plant. And that's according to one of our guest authors, Howard Garrett there. Okay. And we talked about, or I discussed it earlier with the other presenters here, dandelion. I went outside to take pictures of dandelions in my yard and couldn't find them anywhere. All of a sudden, they're like disappeared, you know. But it's a very common one, and it was one of the features on our Facebook page for Tarrant County Master Gardeners. We have a herb of the month that's being presented every month, and for August it was dandelion. In July, it was mullein. So you can catch those once a month and you'll find all kinds of good things about dandelion. How it's grown, what was used for historically, where do you find it nowadays, those types of things. And I bet not a whole lot of you remember how many seeds you can get off one plant. Each little puffball that comes up on a plant has hundreds of them on there. And one plant can have up to 20,000 seeds. So when the wind blows and it blows these little parts of the puffball all over your yard, hence you may have dandelion everywhere. And again, that Teraxum officinale means it was one of the original beginnings of medicines that they put together there. The yellow flowers turn into the puffballs and they're full of seeds. And it really is, people consider it a weed. And I got a call at the help desk the other day, how do I get rid of this? And even though I'm an herbalist and I love to use it, we had to go over how to get rid of it, you know. But you can cut and use the young leaves for salads. If you guys have ever had dandelion greens or dandelion wine, there's all kinds of flavored drinks they make with dandelion there, okay? The root is really good for liver health. The leaves are good for kidney and urinary tract cleaning out, those kinds of things. The tincture, using dandelion and tincture, is probably one of the more common ones I see in the herbal use of it. But calzones, I didn't mention that one, but it's a very versatile weed, very nutritious type of a weed, as they call it. Lion's tooth is one of the common names that you see all the time for it too. Okay, echinacea. I had to go back and fix my slide, as someone pointed out earlier. Misspelled echinacea again. But purple coneflower, very beautiful little guys all over the yard. A perennial, sun to partial shade, does really well out there. Year round from transplants, seed and root divisions, fall, late winter, you guys can read that. But they can get quite tall too, 2 to 3 feet. Spreads pretty easily there. The landscape makes a beautiful border and especially around perennial gardens too there. But herbalistically, antibiotic for immune system, cold and flu treatment. And be careful, it's one of the 2 herbs I'm going to mention today that has a tendency to be hallucinogenic to some people. Some people are very sensitive to it. I mean, I have it in teas all the time, and to my knowledge, I haven't had any bad dreams or anything like that from it. So, gonna have to be careful with it. But those dark pink to lavender flowers, yellow centers are very eye-catching when you're out there. And there are other varieties that have white flowers on them. Okay. Talking about whitish flowers, the elderberry. I have a few of those coming in myself. This is actually a very good one, also a good reference for you if you're interested. Elderberry, called elder or mother elder, has been around for a number of years, as is most of these guys. This tree, or a small shrub, can get quite tall, 10 to 12 foot, maybe even larger. And it does spread. It has beautiful flowers on it, as you saw beforehand. The berries move fast, like it says. The pollinators, the birds love those things. I pick a lot of flowers and dry them up, and we can use them for tea, things like that. But you can make elderberry wine or tea blends out of it. Use them for colds, allergies, arthritis, the immune system. Okay. Be careful. You have to prepare the berries well, or they can really be bad for you. Kind of toxic on there. Okay. And it does like a little damp area, which may or may not do well over here. I've got 3 of them growing this year, so we'll see how they go. Fennel, otherwise commonly known as wild anise, has a really nice taste to it. A lot of people make tea from the crushed seed. Chewing the seeds really kind of help with sweetening the breath, and that's historically what it was used for, that licorice-like flavor a lot of people like. It does help things like your digestion, flatus or gas. Used in the landscape, it does attract a lot of pollinators. And mine went cuckoo crazy this year. I planted a plant in one of my raised beds, and I look over there and it's like taking over the rest of the world over there. The froth on it, I had to clip some of those. My daughter-in-law came over and I gave her some to cook. She was very happy with me that year, but it gets quite big and can get quite fluffy for you. But it does work really well. Okay? And it goes in all kinds of cooking, from salads, liqueurs, the breads. I use it quite often. I love to make a garlic and fennel bread. Tastes really good. Ginkgo is one that I thought about growing one of those trees today. I have a small one. I have to see if it survives the summer, and then I'll put it in the ground this fall. But it's also called the maidenhair. And aren't those leaves beautiful? They kind of fan-shaped out there. Okay. And Ginkgo balboa was actually written up by the Mayo Clinic, one of the herbs they were focusing on. And it's one of the oldest living types of trees. And a lot of products come from those little leaves. Um, Flavonoids, they're antioxidants that help the body cells, protection from damage. Terpenoid is another one, keeps the blood moving, keeps your circulation going as it widens your blood vessels. Okay. Don't eat the roasted seeds, they're not good for you. Okay. And again, research and the article goes into all kinds of areas that you need to be cautious with. If you're taking Xanax, ibuprofen, diabetes drugs, again, look up or ask your professional, do both. Make sure you're not taking it when you shouldn't be. Okay. The beautiful leaves over there. Lamb's ear, I just can't resist touching it with my fingers. Every time I go by there, it's so soft and furry. A lot of kids love to touch it, the same thing. It's an evergreen perennial. You take care of it and it'll last for a long time. Full sun to light shade, I keep mine. I have one group that's in my greenhouse, another one that's in a pretty shaded area through there. You can grow it with seeds, divisions work better, transplants in the spring. Okay. Sometimes gets as much as a foot tall, gets very wide. I have that one. Cut it back in the spring if you need to trim it all up. And it's a very low growing ground cover. But those faint light gray-green leaves are very nice there. Lemon balm is another one. There's a tea with the triple L's. Lemon balm, lemon verbena, and my mind just left it. There's another L in there. I'll think about it. But all 3 are lemony tasting through there. Makes a great lemon, kind of a light drink, flavored water for you. Okay. But Melissa officinalis, again, a base for medicines. Originally, it's called bee balm. Small white flowers clustered around the stem in the summertime, but you can harvest the leaves anytime. Best used when they're fresh. There you go. Lemongrass, lemon balm, lemon verbena. Okay. Good for flavoring honey. Very good. And a lot of people, like I said, my nighttime drink that I have, valerian and lemon balm. Very good for anxiety relief, sleep, digestion. Okay. And it's good in the landscape area too. It's one of those you want to go around and touch to get the smell on your fingers all the time. Okay. Mexican oregano was one that I picked up yesterday, or at least, excuse me, Sunday, when I went to an organic, the Dallas Organic Garden Club, and they meet at North Haven's Nursery over there in Dallas. And this is one of the 4-inch pots that they had on sale. One of the common names is mountain mint, Mexican oregano. Never grown it before, so this is going to be a new experience with it. It's an oregano substitute, Flowers are used in teas quite a bit for respiratory issues. Um, this is probably one of the areas where I'll be using it as flavoring meat when I do cabrito through there. But it's very nice. We'll learn how to use it together. This is mullein, herb of the month for July that we have. These are a big kind of focus picture of these stalks right here. You know, the first year it may not be as big as this, but the one we had at the Pioneer Herb Garden was probably close to 8 foot tall. So it's very, very big when it gets going. And again, lots and lots of seeds through there. Okay. And I bet not too many of you knew that Rembrandt Peale had a famous picture of George Washington called Washington Before the Yorktown, where mullein was featured as a flower in the foreground. I said, I had to go back and look that picture up to see, to believe it before I could get going. But that thing gets really tall. You can plant your seeds year round. And believe me when I say there are hundreds, if not thousands, of seeds off of that stalk with all those flowers on there. Okay. 12 to 18 inches wide, not as big. And the thing about those seeds that are dropping, then you have beginnings of mullein all over your garden. So be careful with that one. Okay. Harvest your leaves both years, the first and the second year. The flower stalk shoots up from them. Be sure you let them dry really thoroughly before you use them. But it's in teas. The flowers are kind of sweet for you. The leaves are bitter. Okay. Used for coughs, asthma, allergies. And again, the leaves are used for bandages and the stalks for torches. You can coat them with oil and they light up really well. Okay. And I found it interesting that they made oil from it, from the flowers, and used for earaches quite well historically. Nasturtium. I've tried to grow that once before. I'm going to try again this year. Not a whole lot of success for me, but commonly it was often called Indian cress. It's an annual plant, full sun, part shade. Again, does well from seeds if you start them indoors and then transplant them out. But it can get quite tall. Most of the time it's smaller, on the smaller side, but it can get tall out there for you and wide. You'll harvest the leaves, flowers, and buds. It helps promote appetite. It's a good source of vitamin C, as are many of our herbs that we talk about. It's excellent in garnish. You can use the leaves and the flowers in vinegars. Treat the seeds like capers and you have that peppery taste in them. And it does quite well in containers, but it's a good one for Mediterranean or Thai cooking. Okay. Onions. I have a funny story on onions right quick. Perennial bulbs, I was growing them for a couple of years in one of my raised beds. We took the raised beds down and we tossed the soil all over the yard. And guess where I had bulbs, onions growing up? Almost every single place we tossed some of that soil at. By the front gate, because I know it wasn't me planting up there. I had onions the next season come up there. So you never know what all you get there. The onion greens, the tops, you can pull them anytime and use them. The bulbs when they turn real good. But again, flavoring agents, great in salads, pizzas. I love onions with almost everything, hence today. But it is pretty good with preventing colds, arthritis, and again, used externally for bites. Okay. Passion flower. I love this picture when I saw it, so I had to grab it. This is from that university that did the native medicinal plants for you. But look at this stem, this up and through here, and the leaves through here. It's a gorgeous picture. Okay. Passion vine, sun or light shade. I haven't tried growing this one yet. It's a high climbing vine. It can spread all over the place if you're not very careful with it. Now I saw that in more than one of my references we're looking at. It does better if you scarify it. You kind of nick it either with sandpaper or a little bit of edge with a pair of clippers. You stratify it cold for about 2 or 3 months. You can either put the seeds out there, like in October, November, and let it get used to the cold, and it should germinate in the springtime, or you can put it in your refrigerator, whichever one works well for you. It's a very slow growing one, though. It may take up to 4 weeks for germination, and then it may take even longer if your soil temp doesn't get up to at least 70 and stay there. So it's not one of those rapid, quick guys that you're going to look at. Rosemary, a lot of us have probably been going for years. It's one of those staples through there. And hence you notice the officinalis again. One of the originals made it from, they used to make up for medications, okay? Those blue and white flowers bloom throughout the year. And one of the things that I didn't recognize on this one is a lot of people use, they rub their dog's fur after a bath with leaves from the rosemary, and it helps prevent or repel fleas. I should remember that one. But it's a good one for pollinators that draws in all kinds of things. It's great as ground cover. And in my yard, because we have such an alkaline soil and it's dark black clay over there, it grows in a couple places really well. And that doesn't grow in most of my yard. I use it in raised beds and it does well there. But I have a patch in front of my house that grows very well up there. If you're going to grow it in containers, use at least a 3-gallon. Needs a little bit more space for you, okay? And be sure, and like with a lot of these herbs, if you're harvesting the leaves, don't get more than a third at a time. You may send it in a sticker shock, so to speak, but, and then some people actually with rosemary tea use it as a hair color. One of the old uses they used to have it with, commonly called the compass weed. Saw palmetto is another one I'm going to try to grow coming up. Again, Valdosta State University, the native medicinal plants is a good reference to there. And it talks about how they're using it with enlarged prostate problems or chronic pelvic pain, those kind of things. Okay. Common name for it is sabal, fan palm tree. Promise you some different types of vegetation talking about. Loves the sun. Okay. Plant anytime from containers. Look how tall it can get. Typically 3 to 7 feet, but as high as 25 feet. Okay. And it gets quite wide up there too. The flowers are a source of honey. The whole thing like a diuretic. Chronic cystitis that talks about prostate in the previous screen. Great for landscape. Beautiful pictures out through there. It's a good source of tannic acid extract too on there. Okay. Very nice. Tarragon is one I've grown before. Hardy perennial. It's commonly called French tarragon. Full sun to part shades through there. Okay. You can use it in salads and sauces and eggs and vegetables, and I can go on and on and on about the different types. And it has that little peppery taste, like anise, licorice kind of taste. You can use it in all kinds of things out there in the kitchen. Okay. And one of the things like today when I was putting parsley in the casserole I was making, it too is being used in the last few minutes of cooking. Otherwise, you're breaking it down to the point where it's not going to be tasting very well through there. So you want to make sure that, okay. Seeds are rare on tarragon. You have very small flowers that rarely open. It grows extremely well in containers. Put it close to the kitchen so you can get to it quite well. Very nice. Turk's cap, I have it here in my garden, and then we saw it at the Pioneer Herb Garden picture there. Very deciduous shrub, it stays green, and then the flowers, and very beautiful, very striking in the landscape through there. Those red fez-like flowers in the summertime, and the red fruit, resembling the rose hips, tastes like apple. We talked about that. Pollinators love this one. Okay. Gets quite tall, and it loves to take over. At the Pioneer Herb Garden, they started in a small little piece of a strip, and now it's like in a strip that's at least 8 foot long. So we will be cutting it back in the fall quite significantly. Otherwise, it's taking over the whole garden over there. Okay. But flowers and fruit make tea, the young leaves, everything about it is edible if you work on it. And again, fruit and flowers can work on your diarrhea if you have that kind of issue going on. Okay. Vitex says we're close to wrapping up here. This is a tree that I started last year from a little bitty stick like, and so it's growing really well. It gets quite, as a small shrub or a deciduous tree, it does get up to as high as 20 foot. It's a fast growing and it's not a long lived. So not doing too bad. This little bucket here is so we can fill it up twice a week to make sure it's watered. And we'll move the bucket around the tree to make sure that we cycle through to encourage the roots to go all over the place with it there. But 25-foot spread, 20 foot tall at least. You can harvest and collect and dry the leaves and the roots. Can't talk today. Use the seeds like pepper as a condiment. And you can make tincture out of the berries, and they help regulate the senses. But pollinators love this one too. My puppy dog brought me a tomato hornworm that was taking root in my Vitex trees one year. So he dropped it in my kitchen floor, and I asked him where he got it, and he's a smart dog. He took me back out to one, and its neighbor, it too had hornworms on it, and we got like 3 or 4 of them. And I collected them and tossed them over the fence to the chickens next door, and they were in love with me too. Commonly called the chase tree. Okay. Yarrow is a perennial, and I have a few of those growing in my yard. I love the white color on a lot of these, but it's often called the devil's nettle. It's sun and part shade. Cuttings, divisions, seeds, you can start it from all 3 of those. It can get up to as much as 3 foot tall and a couple feet wide. Pick the flowers at the peak of their blooming. Okay. The leaves, you got to be careful with this one. Some of our herbs, it's the seeds. With yarrow, it's the leaves. You got to really, they can be used topically to stop bleeding, but it's not something you want to be munching on. Flowers are part that you use in cooking and liqueurs and teas. And the teas are very good to help with hypertension, antiseptic, colds, blood clotting agents. Very good. Okay. And it does make a pretty good tea. Bitter, pungent flavor like tarragon. So be real careful with that one. This one I learned the other day at the advanced training with herbs. We had someone come in and had Yopan tea, and you roast it either mild, moderate, or dark, and it actually tasted very good. One of the common names for it was the black tea. It's the only native caffeine plant here in the North America. Most of our other caffeine teas are from other parts of the world there before, they started planting a lot of them here. But shrub, small multi-trunk tree, full sun, grows from all over Texas, and that's where they're harvesting at, is the southern part of Texas. It can get up 25 foot tall, big, big, big diameter on their stems. Okay. And be careful when you're harvesting it. And there's a lot of good red fruit that ripens from it from the late fall. Okay. And the berries come from females, great for pollinators. But again, the indigenous used to use it as a medic, the leaves, to make them upchuck, whatever it was they were working on. Okay. But it does make a terrifically good taste. And we had it at a master gardener meeting last month, and I think majority of the group hopefully enjoyed it. Okay. But there's a lot that you can deal with the Yopan tree. And be sure you get the right one here. On our resources, you're going to see a wide variety from different parts of Texas. Okay. Here's with container gardening, soil for them, container herbs, herb sashes. Again, we talked about other uses. This is one of the ornamental uses with it. The others make for crafts. Guides with some of our herbs are in their horticultural easy gardening series. Books and magazines. Here are the names of the books and things I referenced today. Texas Gardener magazine frequently has sections on herbs. Mother Earth News. I picked up one this week that was called, believe it or not, A Guide to Unusual Herbs. And one of the things they talked about this month was ginkgo. They had an article that included basil, another one that included aloe and ginger, a wide variety of those in there. Okay. And then you have Herbs for Texas Landscapes, Collin County, Dallas County Master Gardeners. One of the extension agents does a real great job, Joseph. Don't ask me to say his last name. Does a great job over there. This is the medicinal plant handout that I was talking to you about. Again, Collin County, Sarah Dodd did a great job. Water University and Texas A&M did Native and Adapted Plants brochure. Master Wellness, The Better Living for Texas. These are 2 great handouts I typically give when I'm doing this class in person. Okay. If you would like any of these and you can't get them, like The Better Living for Texans, send me a note and I'll see what I could do, either scanning it in or send it to you in paper copy. Because some of these you may not be able to find anymore. They're that rare. Okay. Other ones in regards to questions, we have a number of events coming up. I'll leave this one up for you here. The Senior Expo is coming Thursday, October 2nd. And one of the talks on that day is going to be about tips and tricks to growing herbs in Texas. At the Home and Garden Show, if any of you plan on going there, on Friday, September 5th at 3 p.m., there's going to be a talk on herbs, more than just a spice. Okay? And last but not least, at a variety of areas, whether it be garden clubs or libraries or senior centers, there are going to be some herbal tea parties coming up this fall and early spring. If you're interested in attending any of those, shoot me an email and I'll give you some dates and we'll see about getting you in. Okay. In the meantime, keep looking at the Facebook page for Herbs of the Month. September will be Yopan. October will be Goldenrod, just to whet your appetite. November will be Agarita. December, Milkweed, and we'll go on and on, okay, for a few months. So we're ready for questions. And I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay.
You bet. First question we have here for you is from Cindy. She's a new gardener. She's heard that using seeds from local successful gardens is a great way to get started. Do you know any resources on finding these?
In regards to
Seeds
people
from
that are willing
local,
to give up seeds or like,
yeah, I guess to interpret the question would be any local gardens that you are familiar with that produce really good seeds to be used for herbs.
that's almost like native nurseries in the area. You know, for that, know your neighbors, for instance. I give a lot of seeds out to my neighbors, and they know I don't use herbicides. They know I don't use, any chemicals that would harm the seeds. If you're going to be taking seeds from any place, the roadsides or any fellow gardeners, you need to make sure what they're using. Yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't be worth your time to introduce something to your garden that you can't eat.
Right?
But even the demonstration gardens, when we have plants for sale, but they're not seeds.
All right, I'll expand her question. Do
Yes.
you purchase any of your herbs or have you from any local gardens or nurseries that you would recommend?
Local, yeah. Nurseries, we have to recommend three. At least there are nice nurseries. Those are on the Native Plant Society of Texas. They have a lot of those. And Native Gardens in Euless is one of those. Um, there's a nursery in Burleson called Roots, Roots. It's off of Renfro in Burleson. They have a lot of herbs and have gotten good quality there. Archie's Gardenland in downtown Fort Worth is another one. But if you go to the Native Plant Society's website and look for nice nursery, and when you do that, the screen will crop up and you can pick the part of Texas you're in. And in Tarrant County, our area up here, there's 9 of them listed. So surely in your area, you will find one that's close to your house.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, next question. Lady Bird Johnson Wildfire Center lists milkweed and butterfly weed as poisonous, especially the roots. That seems to conflict with what was said here today. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes, ma'am. Pick up the kind, when you look at the type, because there's different varieties of almost every type of milkweed that you have. There's 4 or 5 different types of butterfly milkweed. There's different ones in regards to even antelope horn milkweed. Take a look at the package, take a look at the write-up that whatever nursery you buy it from, and make sure what you're getting is the type that you can use, whether it be liquid in tea or eating them. Make sure, because there are differences. Yes, sir.
Especially milkweeds for butterflies, you want to stay away from the tropical milkweed.
Correct. Because there's 2 reasons there that we mentioned earlier. One of them everybody knows, and that's because it grows up until winter, and it will lure the monarchs to stay here, and then all of a sudden they have no food. The second reason is it's a host of a parasite called OE. Please don't ask me the Latin name because it's longer than I am tall. Okay. And that will eventually kill out a whole breed, a group of monarchs, because once it inhabits their body, then they have eggs and they have the parasite, and then they, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually extinctify butterflies with that.
All right, Tracy, you'll love this one. This is from Janet. She has a stand of native camphor plants. Any hints appreciated? I'm assuming she means on its use.
What type of plant?
Camphor.
Camphor?
Yeah.
I have no,
Camphor, like camphor.
yeah, I have no knowledge of that one. It's not even on my resource list. And I have a pretty extensive resource list that I've put together.
All
I
right.
mean, it's like, I
My,
don't
my,
know, but Kempler.
my only reference to it is a young kid. Even today, I got a bunch of ant bites. Camphor has been used. You can get a little bottle
Yeah,
used to put on those insect bites, and it really takes the discomfort away.
yeah. I tell you what, if she'll shoot me an email, I'll research it and get back to her, just like I would if I were on the help desk.
Okay.
Doesn't mean because I've got enough herbal references to float a boat in here.
All right.
That's because I love to read and stuff, but I'll find that one. But camphor, yeah, never heard
Okay.
of that one.
And Janet, if you did not get Teresa's information, we'll provide it for you at the end of the Q&A. Mark says, great information. Barry says, is it true that the male ginkgo tree is preferred over the female?
Why? Because of all the berries and with the females that typically are not good for you. And again, and people tend to take part of things that they don't know how to use. So yes, and that's Mayo Clinic actually mentioned that one too on that one with the ginkgo, males versus the females. Yeah.
All righty, that's all the questions I see.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
you might want to verbally or toss up your last slide there and show them again your email for
We
Janet,
can do that. Yeah.
that'd be okay.
Or
Okay.
if anybody has any questions, they can raise their hand and we can unmute you if you have another question you'd like to ask her.
Mhm. Mhm. There you go. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and we hope to see you at the Home and Garden Show or the Senior Expo that are coming up.